Welcome to the Talent Forge, where together we are shaping workforce behaviors. Today, I'm excited to welcome special guest, Dr. Sylvia Rohde-Liebenau, who is the author of a recent book, Who's in Charge, which is a book for leaders and entrepreneurs moving beyond conventional success. So I'm really excited to dig into this conversation and welcome you to the show, Dr. Sylvia.
Well, thank you, Jay. It's such a pleasure to be on your show, which I think is excellent, and I look forward to our conversation.
I appreciate it. So let's get started. How did you get into this talent development space and working with leaders and obviously producing some incredible thought leadership in the area?
Mm. Well, actually, I listened to one of your recent episodes, and I love what you said about your how you got into it because for me it's more or less the same. I didn't plan to. It was more by chance. I study political science, especially international relations and security studies. And I was always very much interested in the psychological aspects of it. So the communication theory, the sociology also of international relations. And then my first job was at the European Commission in Brussels in development cooperation. And there I got more and more interested in first, how does this institution, the European Commission, work internally, like departments being jealous of each other and all these things that you see in every organization, basically. And then why do some organizations change and others don't? And at that stage, I got really curious about that, went into consulting because I found that was more practical than being simply in charge of administering programs. And then I did a training in organization development. And part of that was coaching, and I did a few career strategy programs in the consultancy I was in. And that kind of got me into the space between consulting, coaching, HR, and then I had a job offer at the European Investment Bank. I was in 2003 as career advisor, which was like a mix between career coach and systemic internal change agent for like to change the career management system. And that was 2003. You remember maybe career management was the antecedent to talent management. And at a certain stage, we went to do talent management. And Sylvia, can you make a proposal on talent management? So I worked on that also. And then talent management is very much also about leadership development. And I was very much interested in that. So I got more and more into leadership coaching, leadership programs, and a holistic approach to what is good leadership in order to make an organization successful. And that's where I am today.
That's an awesome story. And, I do find it interesting how many of us share the like, I'm here by accident, but I love being here. So my audience may not even know this about me, but I am a political science junkie as well. So I studied a lot of political
Okay.
science, movements, campaigns, and everything from the communication side. And but I never actually took a look at the international aspect of it. So I'm curious. I'd love to even just stick on this for half a minute. I'd love to
Mm.
know what was it like with the European Commission? Because in the US, when you're looking at some of the political science or anything else, and there's plenty to look at here, even with the two-party system. But when you start looking at something like the European Union or any of those, you've got different countries, different languages, different philosophies, different experiential histories that are kind of coming together and engaging with each other in definitely meaningful ways. I've gotten to do training for the European Union and a couple of the different commissions. I'll actually be heading to Lithuania to do some training for
Mm.
them on a EU grant. So
Mm.
I'm very, very curious. What was that experience like in working with or getting a better understanding of leaders
Mhm.
from all of these different cultural backgrounds coming together?
I love this question. Well, maybe to start with, I grew up with a very international mindset. My grandmother is actually from St. Petersburg, Russia,
Oh,
and she was, but from a family of Baltic Germans, Huguenots, exactly. So there was like German, French blood, etc. But she spoke very fluent Russian. and she immigrated to Germany at like before the no, at the end of the First World War, and she was a crazy woman, very much into like she basically held court in Berlin, knew everyone, etc. And she was a very passionate European. She also was a writer. Her books were very funny, but her journalism was pretty good. And I remember an article by her about like title, I am a European. And that was in the 50s, where being a European was not that typical. So I'm very proud of my grandmother, who was already European when others didn't know what that is really. And so I grew up with a very international mindset. My dad also, he studied as one of the first Fulbright students in the US, and then he went to Paris. And we always had people from all over the world visiting and conversations at dinner, etc. So our parents basically pushed us to study abroad, which I did. So I do my studies. I was in Switzerland, in the UK, in the United States. And so it was for me very clear that I wanted to also have an international career in some way. Although ending up at the European Commission was also not planned. I won't go into that story because it would be a longer one. But I arrived at the European Commission and then I worked on something that was not EU, but it was international, so beyond the European Union. And to your question then, in these institutions, you have people, very many people like me, who grew up already interested in doing something in a broader context, in studying foreign languages and wanting to leave their own country to discover the world, etc. So you have a work environment where people are actually quite open-minded and able to converse. At the same time, you do have these cultural differences. So you have the French culture, which is, I mean, I'm going to go into stereotypes, but there's also truth in it. French culture would be much more top-down, hierarchical than UK or Scandinavian or German culture today. Then there are the cultural ways of communication. Um, German culture, for instance, is quite low context. We sit down in a meeting, a bit maybe like some parts of the US, sit down in a meeting, let's start the meeting. That's not
Correct.
done in Mediterranean countries. So we have to get to know each other so we can read each other and take into account how the other people function. Still remember a Spanish colleague making fun of me when I became emotional. And you said, Sylvia, you're not supposed to be emotional. You're German.
That's funny. I,
Yeah,
well,
laughing.
I've trained in Germany a number of times, and I was with a colleague who I don't think was prepared for the level of directness, but I love it. Like personally, that is so refreshing because you know exactly where you stand. There's no issue with having debate on topics or
Mhm.
discussions, and I think it's such a powerful way to navigate some of the learning
Yeah,
environment.
yeah.
So,
And it's great. At the same time, it has its weaknesses because sometimes, I mean, we are all human beings. So if we don't take into account that there is another person across the table who is maybe having a bad day and we didn't even ask how they are feeling, um, then whatever we are doing is taking off on a bad foot. So like a little bit of that high context, like hello, how are you doing?
can help.
Feeling into the person can help indeed.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. I love that experience because, and before we kind of shift, and I've got a great way to kind of segue this into some of the topics that we're talking about. You know, from somebody who's from the United States, there was not a huge premium on learning other languages or on travel or anything. I think that's changing in our culture. I think the younger generations have much higher needs for exploring and kind of seeking outside of the borders, which is great. But I was brought into sort of an international mindset. I grew into an international mindset, and I did that from an organization that I belong to called Junior Chamber International,
Hmm.
and got to spend. So I've now trained in about 40 countries, but I got to travel 27 of those countries through this organization which is an incredible learning opportunity. One of the things that I found to be really powerful was honestly, in some cases, just sitting back with some humility and really kind of trying to take in an understanding. And you said that so beautifully of like, hey, people are there to learn. When they have that international mindset, they have more of this sort of like openness to
Mm.
understanding, to being curious. I think that's such a necessary skill for both leaders and behaviors in a workplace because in a workplace, we're going to have different cultures. Could you maybe talk for just a moment? What are some of the ways that helped you stay curious in some of those situations where it was more about bringing in an understanding of the different culture or maybe even just getting to know people that maybe had a different perspective? Could you talk to that for just a moment?
Mm. Well, it's the necessity. If you work in this kind of environment, whether it's in an international organization or multinational, like big company, it would be the same. Or if you are in a smaller company and you want to sell something abroad, you will be more successful if you understand the subtleties of the other culture or cultures. If you come like bulldozing in, then you're not going to be successful. Maybe in the short term, because you have the power, because your product is fantastic, etc. But you will not be able to sustain that success. And so what I learned, maybe with my upbringing already, like it's a good thing to be curious and understand. But then also, sometimes I didn't understand because, yes, was educated with that curiosity, but in a German context, like you grew up in Munich, from a Northern German family. Northern Germans are in particular quite square. And so I was surprised at first to see, like in Brussels at the European Commission, the Italians and French and Spanish people navigating in a very different way. And it happened to really like play to my personal ways. I'm more of a creative and open-minded person, so I loved it, but I had to learn how to do this because I was not trained, so to speak, to do it. Um, and then it's so like it's really a question like I you need to do it in order to be successful. And then you simply open your eyes and listen and learn, and you make mistakes. I mean, for instance, I can tell you about one mistake, which is cultural, but also simply a bulldozing question. I was a young manager, I was already in consulting, and I had a local manager in the project, and he had submitted, like, sent me the draft of the inception report of the program, and it was really weak. But rather than finding out what is his problem, what's going on here, I was focusing on that, like a bit low context. This report has to be right. And I first had a call with him, sent him a mail, and then I flew down to the location and we worked for a while. And then gradually I found out I'm hammering too much.
Mm.
And it was like short before he stepped out of the program, I really took a step back to understand, oh my God, he needs my support and he needs my personal support. He needs me to listen to him and to give him the feeling that he's not alone because writing is not his strength. And he has problems with one of his senior people in the program who's not pulling his weight. So how can I, as the director, help him like manage that person? All these things. It's a junior manager failure that I had there, but it was also a failing to listen, failing to understand what's really going on, and that is culture. And it's also, and then we're coming really to who's in charge and smart power. It's not by bulldozing our way through. I mean, I have the power. I can sack him because he's not doing the right job. But what's in it for me to sack him? I need to make the project work. So I will use the best of his talents and combine it with the best of someone else's talent and support him where he can't be so strong.
Such a powerful story because I think that all of us are in different situations where maybe we're we're so focused on the product that we forget about the other context that may have created those conditions and actually approaching that and listening, as you said. And, I really loved what you brought out there in terms of that vulnerability in the story of like, hey, here's where I was at, and this is what I was thinking, and this is how you've shaped and sort of moved to a different perspective. And I think that that's so powerful because our world is continuing to get even more global. I mean, you and I are in different countries right now, different time zones, having this beautiful conversation. And that's where I want to lead it into your book. So, who's in charge, leading with real power and creating an impact in a chaotic world? The world has never been more chaotic. And in your book, you identify kind of like three pillars: energy, power, and legacy. I'd love for you to give us a little bit of an introduction. Why those three pillars? And I'm not going to ask you to answer the question of who's in charge. I'm going to encourage the audience to go source that and find that. But let's talk about those three pillars. Why energy, power, and legacy?
Well, thank you. Um, the book really comes from my experience, both as like already in earlier years researching power and international relations, and then like experiencing and being part of power in the corporate world and international institutions, in consulting, etc. So that is one thing, rethinking power, because very often the way that power is understood is about force and control, and that it's really like taking it in a very limited way. We are lacking the full extent of power if we have that traditional view. So that was power. And then there is energy because I've struggled with my energy, like having more to do and lots to do, so that I wasn't even able to take a breather in between one and the next. And I think most people who work today in interesting jobs have a similar problem. And I saw also then later when I was in HR supporting our leaders and as a leadership coach that most senior leaders and also middle managers are suffering from the same. So, like being under immense pressure to deliver, um, being passionate to deliver also, and having to find out how they can do not only more with less, but um, have an impact and not lose their lives. In the sense of not necessarily dying, but not living a full life.
But socially dying, or
Yes.
the death of the family, or death of their hobbies, their joy, their love. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where then legacy came in, which was like, yes, I want to sustain myself. I want to have as much energy available as possible. And so, how can I regenerate myself? And how do I understand human energy, which is very different from engine energy? And then, how do I have a life that I really want to live? And that's the legacy part. Um, because personally, I also had experiences where it came to me, oh my God, if I die today, is this the life that I really wanted to live, or is something missing there?
Wow.
And from there, I was thinking, okay, so then now how do I make it the life that I really want to live? And that's what I wish for everyone, to not think about that when we are on our deathbed, or when we are like 90 years old and too weak to really change anything about it, but to have it as a companion in our life to think, well, if today was my last day, uh, how would I feel about my life? And from that perspective, how will I shape my life tomorrow?
So powerful when we start thinking about that, like how is my future self going to perceive this,
Hmm.
or what is that going to be? So I really love that. All right, there's a lot to unpack there, Dr. Sylvia, and I have so many questions and thoughts. Now let's go to the power. Let's start with power because you gave a powerful story of, hey, I was the manager or I was the junior manager and I had the authority and the power. And I do think a lot of people sort of misconstrue the term power.
Hmm.
And this is coming from, again, I'm just exploring a bunch of my old past studies, but I loved philosophy. I loved digging into Michel Foucault and Friedrich Nietzsche and understanding like the sources of power and how we perceive power. And, we've all heard some of the different terms. Abhors a vacuum and, step into your power. When we think about power, and I love that you've broken that up into sort of like the strong and dominant power versus maybe a little bit more of the soft power, if we were to even think international relations, right? How can we as a manager, what can we look for, or what could we be thinking about to really exude that softer side of power, that
Yeah.
influence that comes to play?
Yeah. So I really like using the term smart power because then people don't get confused about that there might be a difference, like an opposition between that strong traditional power, which is about force and control, and then there's the soft power, which is nice, but it doesn't really achieve a lot because it's all about collaboration, and sometimes it doesn't work because if we're just nice, I mean, then we can't succeed against these strong-headed people. And I think it's very important to understand that we can be very powerful um, being smart. And that includes, like in my book, I speak about the power of love, which doesn't mean hugs and kisses. It means the power of creativity. So I don't come from fear. And therefore, I have to take things from other people because if I don't take it first, they won't will take it, and so I'm in constant panic mode, and I have to oppress in order not to be seen as weak, etc. If I come from love in the sense of creativity, then I will do things because I believe in them, because I see that we can create a better outcome. So there's a positive, creative force in it, and it's much more powerful than like being reactive in the sense. And then smart means also um, that, for instance, that I think in terms of systems. And SMART, by the way, is an acronym: systems, merging, authentic, personal, relational, and transformational. So SMART. Um, and systemic is really super important when we look at the world that is today. Like in the past, we could maybe be successful in our careers only knowing our own thing and working in our own little corner. Today, especially as managers, we have to see what's happening left and right. Or as entrepreneurs, we have to see what the market looks like. We have to be more like looking to the future, into the distribution systems, uh, um, into the customer needs and how they are shaping into the future and all these things. Um, so the systems thinking is very important for our power because power doesn't mean to dominate. Because if I'm just sitting on my power, that is, I'm dominating, in the end, I don't achieve much. The thing about power is that I do something with it. No? Um, and that's like I think there are people who like to sit on the power because they are motivated really by feeling the most powerful,
And man,
or by accumulating money or something.
yeah.
But I'm not writing and working for these people because it's difficult for me to actually help them. So I really focus on the people who are passionate, who want to make a difference, who want to really achieve something. So do something with their power.
It seems to me that, and I really like this because I think it fits incredibly well with the way that I think about some different behaviors is it's almost this balance, right? Like you have to have a balance of being able to shift in the right moment at the right time between, hey, this is a place where I need to exercise a little bit of that hard power, a little bit of that authority, or, hey, maybe it's a status, maybe it's title, maybe whatever that is. But then there's other places that we need to shift more towards that sort of softer influence and collaboration. And I really like the idea of smart power because it does give us that space of saying, hey, we're making a choice in what type of power we're trying to exude on another person or in the world or on our workplace or on our career, etc. Can you maybe talk for just a brief moment on how do we get better at making the choice of where it's appropriate to maybe lean into some more of that soft power or
Mm.
maybe lean into that hard power to be able to take action with the power that we're
Yeah,
given?
fantastic question. What I can see, and we started talking about initially about the chaos in today's world. It's becoming more and more difficult for all of us to be calm and collected and make good decisions because like things are flying left, right, and center, and it often seems that we're in the middle of a hurricane. And that is why my work with my clients very often is about like the inner leadership. It's like in the smart power model, it's the A, the authentic personal power. Like how can we be grounded in ourselves, which includes very much the body also, grounded in ourselves and our values, so that when something happens, we have a solid foundation on which to base the decision, first of all. And second, we don't get overexcited about something because we will not project or we will not make assumptions, or when we make assumptions, we are aware that we are making assumptions. So we are not having a film running, this guy is doing it because they want to no, they are doing something, and what they're doing is not conducive to the outcome we want to achieve. So we have to have a conversation. And if need be, I have to stop this. But I'm not going to take it personal because maybe he's taking it or they are taking it personal, but I do not need to take it personal. I'm focused on the outcome. I will see the person as a person with their issues and dilemmas, etc. But I will not get enraged or like into a conflict mode because that's where the what you would call the hard power, like the force and control, where it often goes astray, where we don't only put our foot down, which is good, but we do it while hurting someone or while using words that really don't add anything to the improvement of human society.
We see that a little too often, don't we? So, no, I think that's beautifully stated and a lot of great takeaways there. Let's shift to the energy question.
Mm.
And, this is something that I've passionately studied, I would say for at least the last 5 years since the dawn of COVID. I have really dedicated a lot of my research time and efforts into burnout. In fact, I'm actually launching our next iteration of our boot camp this afternoon. So this
Mm.
is like perfect timing. You bring up energy, and it seems that in our sort of like chaotic world, everything is trying to draw energy. And whether that's social media drawing our energy, whether that's politics, whether that's conversations with friends, or you even see, especially in the workplace, doing more with less, and sort of like this absolute need to run at 1,000 kilometers a mile, 1,000 kilometers a minute. How do we look at energy maybe differently? Is there some things that we can think about in terms of our own energy depletion, our own energy renewals? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Mm. Well, first of all, the speed and being often in the control of our gadgets
Hmm.
is very energy draining. So the constant running, and I've been there myself, and sometimes I'm still there when I'm getting not only I have to do a lot, but I'm getting overexcited because I'm passionate about it, and then my mind is going like at 1,000 miles per hour, and
I see you. I feel you on that one. I know that.
that's a lot of fun, but it's energetically, it's not very efficient. So it's very wholesome to have some practices to bring our nervous system down to a healthy level from time to time because the world is kind of pushing us to run. So we have to have a practice to to calm down from time to time, and then we can do pretty good. I mean, that's what I do myself, and I see that that works because the world is fast, and it's good to be able to do fast. But in order to like, we do not have to be fast all the time. I mean, a mentor of mine, he uses the phrase "slow down to speed up," and
Mm.
I challenged him once, say like slow down to speed up, but then we are again too much speeding up. How about slow down to slow down? Because slowing down in this hyper active world is a value in itself. And then we can sprint when it's needed, but we don't have to have a constant 1,000 miles per hour tempo. No, when it's needed. It's like I'll give you that example. My younger daughter, she played soccer for many years, and I saw her in the field, and she wasn't always running. And first I thought, well, she's a bit lazy, but then it occurred to me she's smart because she runs when she has to run.
Serving. Yeah,
And I think that's a very good image for us in any sport. So when it serves to run, then we should run, but not all the time.
I
And so
love
how do we slow ourselves down?
that's such a great analogy too, because you never see one person just running back and forth with no purpose in any sport. They do. They use their explosive power when they need to. They take that conservation approach when they're sort of when they have that moment. That's a great analogy. I never actually thought of that, so that's beautifully stated. When we're thinking about energy, and this is something that I have found to be true in the burnout research that we're doing, is burnout is actually not about the amount of work that we're doing. Burnout is much more about how we feel about the work, the quality of the work, the purpose of the work, or whether or not somebody is just dumping work on our desk, that resentment that we may have
Yeah.
is actually one of the contributing factors that depletes our energy. And that frustration, that isolation, that resentment can just, I mean, just bleed out our energy. Ha- Do you have any suggestions or thoughts when it comes to, in leadership? Whether you're at the top of the chart, and I got into entrepreneurship because I thought I'm not going to have a boss. I love being independent. And then I realized that every client is a boss and
Yeah.
every worker is a boss, right?
And we
So,
are our own boss, a very,
yeah,
very severe
right.
boss.
So we all have these different aspects where maybe we are feeling a little resentment or frustration or isolation. How can a good leader take a step back from that and really kind of rethink, well, what am I doing with this energy? What am I doing with this space? And how is this serving me? Do you have any suggestions or thoughts for those leaders and entrepreneurs that may find themselves feeling that energy depletion from resentment or from that emotional, sort of that emotional degradation?
Yeah, very good, very good. Um, the emotional part is something that we can really control when we're aware of it. So that for us humans, there are actually four main parts of energy, which is our physical energy, the emotional energy, the mental energy, and the spiritual energy.
Mhm.
Then there are a few extras, but these like it's good to start with these four. So the physical, most of us know about, like eat well, sleep, hydrate, do some sports, etc. So I won't talk about that, but the emotional is really, really important. And it's about, for instance, being aware of what is going on inside me. So one of our company doctors once joked to me, he said, well, everyone here says they're irritated.
Mm.
They don't have any other emotions. Like they can't pinpoint what it is. So the first start is actually, what's
Catch
going
all.
on? It's
Yeah.
like, first of all, realizing I'm having an emotion here because many people are not aware. They're just like they get a headache or something, or they get tired, or they start screaming at someone, mostly at their cat or their wife or their children or something.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is actually going on? And then, like this very simplified approach is to learn that we can pause and choose.
Hmm.
So our reaction is it never has to be a reaction, it can be a choice. And that will make us much more successful human beings and leaders when we have that ability to feel, to be aware, and to pause and to choose. And let me say, like one very important thing there again is the body, because we feel our emotions only because we have a body. Otherwise, we wouldn't feel them. So to allow ourselves to feel into our body and to know that this is a super precious instrument to to feel what's going on and to use that. That's really, really, really helpful. The other part, which is like linked to emotional, but it's actually mental, is our ability to focus. And then we come to the gadgets again. So not to be like multitasking, which by the way doesn't exist. Actually, it's a very like it's a layered like task hopping actually when we think we are multitasking, and it creates a huge fatigue.
Yep.
So that's what I would say, like really think about how you can be more conscious of your feelings so that they don't run you, but you can make choices. And also not only choices on your behavior, but what is going on here? And do I have to interpret it that way or do I have a choice? I give you an example of my own life. I once wanted to have a conversation with my director about a program I was responsible for. And they had postponed the start, and I was getting really like frustrated. So like I was frustrated about it. And he said, well, it's not going to happen until 3 months or something. And that was on Friday evening. And I stormed out of the office more or less, and with this feeling, poor me, this is a horrible organization, and now I'm going to have a horrible weekend. And then 2 hours later, I was thinking, Sylvia, now, do you want to have a horrible weekend? No, it's actually not worth it. So, what perspective can I take on this, and what action can I take to change this? So I felt like I do not have to make myself a victim of a horrible organization. I, Sylvia, have the power to propose a meeting with my director on Monday to say, let's talk about that because I believe it's really important that we start earlier. And I take the responsibility for that. And then let's see. And with that feeling, I said, okay, I'm in charge. By the way, who's in charge? I'm in charge. And I will take responsibility because afterwards people might say, well, Sylvia, it was your fault. You're wrong. But that taking responsibility for what was going on really helped me to feel good about it. So I had a great weekend. Monday we had a talk, and luckily he agreed with me. But even if he hadn't agreed, I would have felt better because I took responsibility and not like, oh my God, they're so bad. They don't understand me, etc.
Well,
But
I love that because there's so much depth there, and audience, if you didn't hear it, first of all, naming the emotion, getting an understanding, being aware of it and saying, all right, this is where I'm at. But I
Mhm.
love how you transitioned out of like the victim mentality of woe is me to like, no, actually I have power. I have agency. I can step into this and create a different pathway. And how powerful, because so often we get stuck in our emotions and we just ruminate on it. So being able to kind of take that step back and say, no, I'm gonna own my weekend. I'm gonna have a great time. I'm choosing to do something about this because I do believe it's the action. You know, burnout is just an early warning system. It's telling us something's off. And when we make the choice to take action, that's where we start to see the relief of those symptoms or that relief of the frustration or anything else. Like, okay, I've got a plan. I'm going forward.
Yeah.
So, in speaking of going forward, and I know that we're nearly out of time here, but I think it's important to bring some awareness. This legacy concept, that is that forward thinking, like how am I going to be remembered? What's the purpose that I'm serving? Can you talk to us just a little bit about that pillar, legacy?
Yeah. So what I've seen very often, especially as a coach to senior leaders, is that someone's a very successful manager, leader, and when they talk then privately to me, there's a lot that they're not proud of or not happy about. Either they have lost like the connection with their family, They don't do the things that they love anymore, or they've become a person that they don't want to be. And I've seen that so often that that was one reason why I said, well, there's this part, if I speak to leaders, what could help them? There's the energy, there's understanding power, and then there's also give a meaning to your life so that at the end of the day or of your days, you will be at peace with yourself.
Mhm.
But if you do that now, you're at peace and thriving already today. And then there's a personal story. I had breast cancer in that's 2010 now. That
Right.
was a like wake up call for me to say, hey, Sylvia, death is not a theory. It actually happens. Um, and then it was also through a very interesting experience I had in my acting training. It was later on, where we did a eulogy exercise, which is also in the book. And we did it not only in writing, but speaking. And I connected really with the things that I want to do in my life, that I still want to do in my life, and realized that's what I'm passionate about, but I have not yet done these things. So I better get going. And again, the end of our lives is not a theory. It kind of happens to all of us. So if we bring that, when we bring that into our consciousness, it's not being morose to say, oh, it's talking about death all the time, but to make death a friendly companion that actually makes us, helps us focus on what's good in our life and what we want to create in our life and what we want to be remembered for. Because this legacy is not about having a building named after our name, um, or making lots of money. We can also be proud of that, but then also having a reason. Why does that make me proud? Could be a very good reason. But what is my why behind that? And then I think for many people, what is sometimes comes into focus only very late is how will other people remember me? And to put that in focus earlier on, I think is so precious for all of us.
I love that because I do believe that as a species we often avoid conversations about death because it's uncomfortable. There's uncertainty, there's a finality to it. But the and I'm troubling sourcing the author, and I'm it'll come to me before we finish. If not, I'll put it into show notes. But the concept of dying before we die and really kind of exploring, like, what does that mean? What does my existence mean? How does that go? That can be such a powerful motivator for us to put in perspective the things that we need to prioritize,
Yeah.
because if we just follow every social media thread or anything else, we're probably not going to be really proud of that at the end of our days. But when we do think about the impact and the legacy that we are going to leave behind, that can really generate some powerful positive behaviors and maybe help us avoid some of those ones that are holding us back. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And then it links back to purpose because a lot of the work that I do and that drives me is connected to purpose. So if I have that red thread, I don't need to, or I will not want to check Facebook and the cat videos all the time because there's no purpose in that. So I will be more the person who will create something myself rather than being led and driven by random things that are happening out there because I have a purpose.
Which probably helps you maintain energy and probably helps you step into your power. So I can see that these three things are really powerfully related to each other. Dr. Sylvia, this has been an incredible conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. If our audience wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do so?
Very simple. I'm on LinkedIn, so my name, Sylvia Rohde-Liebenau, and then through my website also, which is smartpowermethod.com.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that's in the show notes. So this is again, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. It obviously we share some passion and some
Yes.
alignment on this. So thank you for bringing your perspective, experience, and stories to the Talent Forge. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Jay. It was a wonderful conversation. I really loved it.
I'll look forward to future ones. And thank you, audience, for tuning into this episode of the Talent Forge, where together we are shaping workforce behaviors.